This PoetryPower video is designed to support you with your independent homeworks. You will remember being given this grid. Today we are focusing on the monologue task. We are focusing on task 10, the creative writing task, where we're completing one or more of the following: a monologue from another character in one of the poems. And we're going to use My Last Duchess for this. So if you need a recap on that, head over to the Poetry Burst channel or dig back in this sequence for one of the PoetryPower videos on My Last Duchess. It may help you with the background knowledge to move forward with this task. To start with, I want you to connect to the topic that we're writing about. I think most of us have felt this. We've felt the way the man in this picture looks: isolated, alone, small, as though the world around us is dark. And for me as a child, that was about friendship. It was about those days when my friends were off sick or they were on a trip and I was the only one in the playground, no one to play football with, because my mates were somewhere else doing something else. So, key question for you: have you ever been abandoned or cut out of a friendship, and how did that make you feel? Once you've had a think about that, unpause the video and we'll dive straight into building our monologue. We're going to start with a waggle to give us a sense and a shape. This one is from the point of view of the servant in My Last Duchess. Now, there isn't a servant in My Last Duchess, so this is an imagined character. And what we're imagining is that this person has seen into the life of the Duke and Duchess, and then towards the end we've used our imagination to create a role for them that's kind of implied in the poem, but isn't definitely there. We'll have a read of it first, then we'll pick it apart and build up to our own in stages. Here we go. Shivering, I sit here in my damp attic room, far from the luxurious gallery where the Duke entertains his guests, where he makes arrangements for a new marriage, a new Duchess. Through the evening air I catch a faint note from the minstrels, whose music provides a soothing backdrop to the mutter of conversation, the occasional laughter, the whispered secrets. Drifting on the breeze, the rich scents of herbs and spices, cinnamon, rosemary, garlic, remind me of my own hunger. I sit here, shivering with the cold and with fear. A high-pitched musical giggle draws my attention, and my mind drifts back. I remember. Just 3 months ago I stood at attention as My Last Duchess laughed happily at the antics of a foolish donkey plodding around the secluded garden. It stomped between the apple trees whose fruit hung low. Splashes of colour painted the rich blue of the afternoon sky with reds and greens and yellows. I stood ready to obey her every wish, her every command, while Fra Pandolf painted her beauty, capturing the faint half-flush that brightened her complexion. Concentrating hard, he lifted his gaze to remind her to sit still, and she stifled her laughter. His brushes traced her delicate features on the canvas that the Duke had ordered. I remember footsteps echoing on the paving stones as the Duke entered. A flicker of suspicion seemed to darken his cold features, even as a slight smile played across his face. It seemed to me that smile never reached his eyes. Staring at the portrait, he appeared content, but when he looked at her lively face dancing with joy, his expression grew clouded. A shiver of fear ran down my spine as I watched. "Follow me," he instructed. Through the corridors, down the gallery, decorated with the portraits of his ancestors, I followed him to a private chamber. Whilst he sat behind his desk, I stood expressionless, listening as he bluntly gave me orders that chilled me. He gave commands. All her smiles must stop. I was to murder his Duchess. How could I commit such a vicious and barbaric crime? How could I disobey the Duke, whose absolute power controls my life? So, a good thing to do with a waggle, when you've got one, is to pick apart what it's doing. You should start by finding lines that you like. Find lines that speak to you in some way. Find lines where you think, yeah, that's a cool effect, I like that. And then you go from there to trying to work out, well, how does that apply to my own writing? Once you've had a look at this and to think about which bits appeal to you, unpause the video and we'll move on to look at the next section where you start to construct some ideas of your own. So let's set the task. I want you to write from the point of view of a young Duchess recently married to a Duke who is troubled by their relationship changing. I want us to start with a metaphor. I want us to go highbrow and hard so that we can show our audience and our reader that we know things, that we are clever, that we're in command of our writing. So I've given you this line: I feel as if I am a painting now. And I'm after the idea of she feels frozen, forgotten. She feels as though she's not human anymore, that she's not seen as a person. So, simple task, try to build up on that idea, push it forward into 4 or 5 more sentences. A possible waggle is here on the screen for you. Let's have a read of it. I feel as if I'm a painting now. I feel frozen, flat, not a person anymore. It is like I'm hanging on a wall, everyone's staring. I am not made of flesh and blood anymore, but paper, thin and fragile, and I am painted with dark colours of sadness and worthlessness. So a straightforward job. Pause the video, using that waggle, take the line, I feel as if I'm a painting now, and build it up. Create that sense of a woman who feels powerless. Once you're done, unpause the video and we'll push that a bit further. Now, if you're following these in sequence, you've done something similar to this before. We looked at the idea of worry in our sequence on Storm on the Island and the writing we did around that. Here I want you to use this idea of painting over paint. That if you were to scribble over a painting in something like thick black paint, you wouldn't be able to see what was there already. It would be got rid of, it would be obscured. So, your idea here, worry smears itself across my life like paint across a wall. And I want you to build up to this sense that the Duchess knows something is wrong. She knows that things are not going to go the way that she wants them to go. A possible waggle here. Worry smears itself across my life like paint across a wall. It changes the picture. It takes away from everything that was there before, replaces the colours, corrupts me until I don't even recognise my old self. Again, take the ideas that are there, borrow what you want, run with them to create something that's new and individual and yours. Now, we need to pull away and zoom away from our first 2 paragraphs to get a sense of the structure. So there's the original monologue. You can see it runs to 7 paragraphs, 3 of them 1-sentence paragraphs, with some dialogue in and a flashback in the centre. If we extract only the really important bits in the box on the right on the screen now, you can see the idea of shivering. I sit here far from, creating that sense of exclusion. Then, through the air I catch a note of, and it smells in this one, but it could be sounds or happiness or feelings. You want the sense that somewhere else there's something happening that your narrator's not involved in. Then your flashbacks are signalled by 1-sentence paragraphs like I remember. And then a clear time signal, just 3 months ago, and flashback to when things were happier. Then you want to take the reader through the process of change. How did that marriage cool off? How did suspicion start to infect it? On the left-hand side, you can see a few bits of waggle that might support you. And your job now is really straightforward. Using your first couple of paragraphs and the ideas that's generated, pause the video, plan and write an extended monologue, ping your English teacher for support if you need it, check back into My Last Duchess or rewind this video if you need some ideas for where to go with it. But best of luck, enjoy your writing.